Welcome to Custom Mapping 101. And thanks for the introduction, Mauro. I'm Frank Spillers, and I've been working in this field for 20 years with experience dynamics, and I've helped many organizations with journey mapping. And I'm going to share with you today some of the things that I have learned along the way, some of the things I've found to be easy in terms of making this process easier to use, and some things to look out for. But I want to share with you a way that you can get through this process. So welcome if those of you who are joining, and for those of you who are watching this later, welcome to this session. This is an interactive session, and I'm going to ask you to do a few things just to keep it interesting. So what and why are we journey mapping, how to conduct journey maps, and finally use them, how to apply them in your organization. So let's start out then, what a journey map is. Is it a visualization tool? When I first started using journey maps over a decade ago now, I thought they were a visualization tool. And what I realized is that they're more than that. They're a tool for orchestration. And orchestration is a way of understanding how we bring channels, touch points, and moments of truth together. Our channels are those areas where our customer is, using the web, using customer service center on their phone. Maybe they reach out to a chat bot. Maybe they talk to an actual physical customer representative in person. And the touch points are kind of where those interactions occur. And the moments of truth are what's emotionally significant about those. So we'll talk more about those later. I'm familiar with those terms, or if they sound like buzzwords, we'll talk about them later. The other big thing is that they're a way to find out what your customers need. It's very difficult to understand customer or user experience without understanding what they actually need, and that means what problems they're having, what pain points they have. They're also a storytelling tool. So storytelling, very important, that journey maps are not just the visualization. They're there to help you communicate those customer needs and those customer pain points. And I think storytelling is a very powerful a tool that I didn't myself even realize the power of it. You think storytelling. It turns out that storytelling is how our brains work. We don't learn without stories. So stories are really important. And I've seen the power of this. I've seen a CTO attend a visit with a customer, or a research interview. From the one visit, he goes back to the team, to the company. This is a bank that I was working with. And he said, I saw this customer, and this is what the customer did with our mobile app. And he proceeded to tell a story. And everybody was like, wow. And I was like, and it's because of who he was. He was a senior executive. It was great that he was actually attending this user research. But if you can get your senior executives to attend your user research and to attend your journey mapping process, you're going to be in a good place. Finally, just to understand that maps are decision-making tools. They're not just that picture. They're not that diagram that has channels. You hear a lot about channels with maps and touch point mapping, but the industry has moved towards orchestration. There's even software today that can help you manage all these different touch points and coordinate them using AI and so forth. So for the more sophisticated companies and organizations, that's what that looks like, in terms of the measurement of journey mapping results. So I like to say it's not the, you've heard that expression. It's not the journey. It's not the destination. It's the journey. You've heard that expression. So I like to say it's the journey, not the visualization. And it's the journey. What I mean by that, it's the journey that you take with your team. This is a big shift, right? Let's come back to we're going to dig deeper into those topics here, and welcome for those of you that are joining, or if you're still watching this from home. Let me actually, while folks are in there, let me ask you a question. You should see a question on your screen there. Is that visible, Mauro?
Yes, I can see it.
All right, cool. So go ahead and answer that, or think about it right now if you're watching this later in the recording. How would you answer that? And are you able to take the poll? Mauro, can you tell me if that's?
Yes, it is functioning.
Okay.
I am filling in mine. I hope the other participants are also able to fill in theirs.
Okay, if you haven't filled it in, which only one of you, only Mauro's filled it in. This is, let me introduce the format. This is an interactive session. It's, because of with COVID, training is not as possible in person, that I've tried to make this very interactive. I was saying at the start, Mauro and I attended a webinar and we both fell asleep. This guy was so boring, and Mauro said, "Please don't do that to me, Frank." And I said, "No, I won't do that to you, Mauro." So this is an extra special request from Mauro that we keep it engaging. All right, so I'll give you another few seconds there to answer that. Let's take 30 seconds. And actually, you can just answer the first question, I think. It's probably giving you a whole page of questions. Maybe that's what you're taking this. Wow, he's giving us a whole quiz. I only intended for the first one to show up, actually.
Yeah, we got all 6 of them.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. And then you're wondering why you have so much work to do here.
Yeah,
sorry about that. So let me see. Yeah, my polls maybe. Let's try that first one. Do you see the results of this poll now?
Yes, we can see the results.
Okay. So it looks like just getting started, but tried it with not great results and doing it. So we have a kind of even mix, at least of the people that got a chance to answer that first one, and a few people that are still learning it. So let me try. We might come back to that poll, but I wanted to. Yeah. So I wanted to continue with, what we're seeing in the background here is a journey map. Maybe you've seen this very journey map. This journey map was put together by Adaptive Path, who are now part of Cal, which is one of the biggest banks in the US. And they basically, for them to really start to do UX, they acquired a UX firm. That's how they did it. It's kind of a rare thing for a bank to make that kind of move. And, it's taken Capital One it took them a few years to at least to see the result. I'm also a customer of theirs. You can really see it. You can see it down to like the clarity of the billing, the customer service, the ability to manage and transfer accounts. It's all there. But back in the years of journey map, which really started to become a big deal in 2010 to 2015, around that period. A lot of people look to this map, and what this, I know when I first saw it, I was like, well, what's going on with this map? So I was a little confused. And it's to say that the beauty of your maps, the clarity of your maps, the ability to use this as a communication tool. I remember we said that journey maps are a decision-making tool, that's important. So this map is okay, but what's going on here? So we have some guiding principles at the top. The important thing that we see structurally in journey maps is the stages at the top. These stages are guiding us through, you know, the area of that particular customer interaction. And then we see something the customer is doing here, and then we see kind of thinking, feeling, experiencing, and some opportunities down at the bottom, right? So it's an okay map, but you shouldn't copy it. I know people just took this as a template, copied it for their own. I once helped a company hire a UX designer, and he had this in his portfolio. You know, and I was like, wait a minute, that's the adaptive path journey map. I thought to myself, but the point here is that that you don't have to use a template that your software is providing you. There's lots of tools, for example, that will give you a journey map tool in the software. You don't have to use that necessarily. And we'll talk more about that. But let's go into why journey mapping matters. So I mentioned that it's a tool to improve decision-making with a more holistic and strategic kind of view. So seeing the customer, that's why we use the term journey, because we're seeing them from beginning all the way to the end, right? Now, what that beginning and end are gonna, you know, will depend. We'll get into that in just a moment. But they're there to help us bring insights into what's broken. You look at the customer experience with COVID or post-COVID, if you're in a post-COVID situation, or maybe you're in a second wave or a third wave or what, but COVID has shown us what's broken. And you really see it with service delivery, service design and service delivery. And my feeling about that is that a crisis, a pandemic like that, that's a chance to get better, to fix those things. So I think it's very important that companies do what's called future state journey mapping. Like, what is the future? When someone comes back from COVID, or what do you want them to do differently? There are all these new rules, and you have to do this, and you have to do that, and walk here and go there, and blah, blah, blah. But what do you want them to do differently? You know, what is that future, that ideal journey? Because it's miserable depending on which brand you're dealing with. And the COVID experience is one that tells us that, you know, this is your chance to fix what may have been broken already, reevaluate, improve, and make it better. Now, the third reason we do journey mapping is to get our stakeholders talking and working together. I had a session, a journey mapping session, where it was for the development team, but I invited the marketing director and the sales director and the CEO. This is a small company. The CEO is a really bright CEO. He's very, very capable, you know, like in terms of sharing and working at this level of you know, of these types of user experience, you know, workshops. But I need to tell you that the most valuable insights and sharing came from the sales director and from the marketing director. And the reason is because I think those two roles have a different angle. Their job function is different. Their what they do is different in the company. And so their contributions were really unique. But a lot of companies say it's this collaborating, it's this ability to bring data really together. And the way that I want you to use journey mapping, the way that I advocate that you use it, is in a collaborative capacity. It's no good doing journey mapping by yourself at your desk or with your UX team or, you know, with a friend in the company. I wanted to just show you some different examples of journey maps. This is from a credit union that we worked with. And this journey map was very focused on the get account. So as account acquisition, there was a new technology that changed the mobile app. You know, you could essentially just streamline it and make it easier. So this is not the end-to-end experience with the credit union, but of course, we got some information about that because when we did the research phase, we realized that there was a lot of opportunities on the table. In particular, right, the business said, go and find out, the best way to make apply easy. It turned out that was actually really easy. It was actually easy to make it easy to apply using optical character recognition with a mobile app and streamlining the UI and the UX, the interface and the experience, making it really simple. But what we realized was more difficult, this last stage I called the dream stage. Dream stage, especially for credit union customers, is so important because unlike a bank, a credit union, the relationship, the person usually joins as a student because it's a good cause, it's community, the money stays in the community. Then they just don't know about any services. Now, this is any bank or any other product. There are many banks attending the live session here today, so I'm using a bank analogy to make it easier for you. But it happens across any interaction that a customer has in terms of their relationship, how to come back to the next phase. I really like this template that we created. It just felt visually easy to explain and review and look at, and not overloaded. And then you have design recommendations at the bottom. Always important that those are in a journey map. So we have a similar approach with that template, but I want to show you that this is, you can change the template depending on the project, depending on the scope, depending on the situation you're in. And so we brought in the similar type of silhouette characters because they kind of help with the visual. The difference on what I wanted to share in this one is we brought in some artifacts. These are actual photographs from the user research that we did. And there was a presentation with another 200 or 300 of these photos actually, but these were significant ones and we wanted to tie in the real evidence that we saw and bring it to help us remind and also help us tell the story. Because when you're presenting a journey map, telling the story with the customer's, experience, their pain, whatever you saw, heard, felt from the customer, that's really powerful. And so that's important. Here's another one. This one is from Orange. And you'll see, again, the stages at the top. And this one, this is very much like a lot of templates that you see. And, again, to show you different ways to represent. But depending on what your journey mapping, what the scope is going to be represented in the journey map. This is an example from a client that we worked with that was a persona-based journey map. So I think we had 8 personas. And we created 8 different journey maps. So this is like a thin slice, a day in the life of this is in a healthcare insurance situation. And you can kind of see the different channels here and where the break is and then what she's doing. And these red texts are showing lost opportunities and so forth. So you can represent a little, differently. This is a persona-based journey. Now, I need to say how you choose that is depending on how much time you have, how much of an audience you have. In this case, this journey process was created without engaging stakeholders, and nobody read it. Actually, even though all this time was spent making these personas, nobody read them. So this was a lesson in it doesn't really matter if you do a different journey map for each persona. It's really your audience internally. What are you trying to influence? What are your business objectives? What are you trying to improve upon? Who's involved? Whose ear do you have? The process I want to advocate with you says, bring those people to your journey mapping session, right? And we're going to talk about a workshop approach to do that. So the question that a lot of people have is how, what types of journey maps can you do? And by the way, if you're seeing this live, feel free to share questions and we'll take those in the Q&A. You can put those questions in the, there should be like a question and answer or some type of chat window there that you can put those in. And if you're seeing this later, you'll see the answers to those in the Q&A part. So I think there are 5 different journey maps that you should consider. The first one is a strategic kind of situation. Why use this one? Well, and I have Saga there. Saga is an agile term. So Saga, like mapping a direction, like that you're going to go in with your epics and your user stories. And it's kind of taking a step back. A lot of developers focus on user stories and these epics, which have a bunch of user stories in them. And there's nothing wrong with that, except that sometimes you lose the forest for the trees, you know, the big picture. And so that's what the strategic situation. If you don't know what your COVID, for example, re-entry user journey is, customer journey, you might want to just take a step back and find out, you know, look at the whole thing strategically. Where are we at? And then make sure that we have a COVID re-entry piece to our journey map, you know. And the second one is a tactical one. So the tactical one represents that more kind of day in the life, right? So it's like I showed you the view of the getting an, that was very tactical. That wasn't so much strategic. It was very tactical. We realized though that the focus, that the opportunity, the thing that we were trying to optimize, the conversion, actually it was more around retention than it was around acquisition and conversion and so forth. So that's really where the big opportunity came out. The persona based, I showed you an example of that. So persona, the reason why I would do a persona based journey map is because I want to get very granular and I want to take my personas and I want to understand each one of those personas. What pain are they feeling? I don't do it for every project because it doesn't need it sometimes. Sometimes I just need a strategic situation. And sometimes I take my strategic journey map and I put the personas on it, right? So you can kind of blend like the you know, the goodness from one to another. The current state and the future state are, again, more of a style. So again, you can blend, you can do a current state strategic journey map with personas added on there. And it just means it's not a deep dive into the persona, but at least it gives you a reference point, you know, oh, this really is important for this persona, or, you know, or for that persona. Now I have a note down here using the same research for these current and future state. So you don't have to do two separate waves of research to understand these. You can do one piece of research and get insights from the current state to the future state. So the types of experiences that organizations are mapping are UX, CX improvements, digital transformations. You can use journey maps for product redesigns or overhauls. They're used as service design, kind of the bread and butter. Before you start a service design process, you need to do a journey map, customer journey map. So if you have a service-focused experience or improvement, a journey map is your baseline. And in service design, we had a blueprint, a service blueprint. So first you get your insights from your journey map, and then the blueprint you build that shows you how to actually execute that journey and what relationships are involved, what systems, what databases, what vendors. The difference is in the service blueprint, if there are any service designers on, or if you're tracking that, the service blueprint is also sharing what the employees must do in order to complete this service delivery. The journey map doesn't really talk about that unless you're doing an employee journey, right? In the case of some type of internal you know, project that you're working on. But in most cases, a journey map doesn't incorporate what employees do, and it doesn't go into the steps of how to execute like a blueprint does, a service blueprint. So maybe you've heard those terms, journey map, service blueprint. Journey map, one of these UX things that cuts across. We use it for everything, personas. And you know, the final one there, like broken things. So user adoption, it's a really big deal. You know, you spend all this money building a mobile app and then the user adoption is low, you know, so you need to understand what are people even trying to do in the first place, you know? So if you look at the stats, 74% of organizations are saying journey mapping is highly valuable. So journey mapping is a critical activity that organizations are doing. So again, seamlessness. It's basically the new default. And the reason is because we are, omni-channel. We jump from devices, we jump, in one day we touch so many different channels. And many years ago, it used to be the case that you're on your laptop. I remember we're designing for now desktop. We're designing now for mobile. We're designing for, whatever. And it's not like that anymore. There's an omni-channel or a cross-channel thing that's going on all the time. So this is particularly important in e-commerce and retail. Also, IBM and e-consultancy have found that 45% of revenues come from retention activities. So the money's in retention. It's the whole thing. Instead of spending money to get a new customer to acquire, it's cheaper to upsell or go deeper into that customer thing, right? The study that Salesforce did on it's called Shopper First Study. Mobile is critical. This is where a lot of organizations are, when you say omni-channel, for a lot of organizations, it's our website and our mobile app or our mobile site. It's really just that, but if you look at this holistically, it's really not a call center. You have, maybe a physical interaction. Maybe it's a brochure, maybe it's send in the mail, maybe it's something someone fills out with a pen and a piece of paper, so it's not just mobile, but mobile is critical is what they found. The second purchase is critical. The second purchase, coming back, the dream stage, and values are critical, connecting with customer values. In the United States, the issue here is diversity and inclusiveness, because America's, having a second civil rights movement. And so trying to understand how to represent that and bring that voice into your brand and bring that into your organization, it's a huge, huge deal. But finally, we journey map because it's those gaps and opportunities. We're trying to understand those gaps and opportunities that exist with our experiences that we're serving up, right? Where are the gaps and opportunities? That's why people are journey mapping. So should you journey map? Well, the question is, what's it going to do for you? What's it going to give you? And why are you doing it? Are you doing it just because it's a trendy thing, because you think it's going to help you? In other words, do you have pain points? Do you have analytics, or do you have the call center sales manager coming up to you and saying, my God, we really need to fix this. This is a huge problem. Customers are complaining, and the other question is, what do you currently need to build momentum on? What is it? A new initiative? Is it COVID reentry? That should be on everybody's mind, so these kinds of things are critical. The other question is, do you have pre-journey research in place? Because to do journey mapping, and you've heard me even sharing those examples, imagine if I shared those examples with you without the research. In other words, stories that I made up in my head instead of stories that I heard directly from the customer. What kind of difference in that journey map would that be? So it's very important that either you have some kind of research practice, or that you're prepared and willing to do user research as part of your journey mapping process. And I would use the word have to. I would say you have to do user research. So let's go to how to conduct the journey mapping process. First of all, one of my favorite quotes, that journey maps aren't created. Again, it's not just that visual that you come up with, that your designer comes up with. The agencies are the worst at this. The UX agencies especially, they create these cool visualizations, and they're just so complicated. And it's because a visual designer created it, a graphic designer put it together, and they weren't thinking about the audience who was consuming it. Or maybe that journey map was not evidence-based. It wasn't grounded in user research and customer data, customer insights, real customer pain. he also goes on to add this next part, which I think is hilarious. And he says that, usually if we, when we try to create journey maps, we either, make up the stories, right? Or we just focus on what we think is best, right? Jake Sorfman, research director at Gartner. So the steps to creating a journey map, how to do this. The first step is workshopping, right? And I'm going to introduce you a two-step workshop process. The first workshop brings up that internal, that's fine. Like that quote about, you hallucinate your own, the customer's needs. That's fine. Do that. Have those conversations. The second workshop is going to bring the realistic picture, and then that's where some big ahas can occur. So bring your assumptions there, your knowns, your unknowns, and you can start doing that today. You can create your first journey mapping workshop, bringing stakeholders together and mapping out, creating an assumption journey map. Second of all, then, is collecting user research and discovering what's going on. Now, you can do that before that first step, especially if you have UX process in place. You can bring user research to your workshop. If you're already an advanced team, you can jump straight to the second workshop, But the purpose of the two-step workshop process is to allow that stakeholder collaboration to occur, right? We said stakeholder collaboration is so important. And so we have to allow the space for it to grow. Then we analyze those datas and those ahas and workshop it. And that's where we create the visualization, the thing that you see, the end state, the thing, the thing that the map that guides us, But remember that a map is just a pointer. It doesn't tell you anything about the experience to where you're going, and that's what we want to understand, is that customer experience. So the first workshop, you're going to define your business objectives, your KPIs, your team, your scope, right? The team is important because you need a champion. You need someone who can manage and nurture this process and take you through it, right? You need someone who's going to own it, in other words, it's not going to fall away. The scope is important because, and if you only look narrow, you'll only see narrow. I've done that before, because I'm a UX consultant. When a client says we need to know this, they tell me, look at this. And I've looked at this and I come back with this. So I come back with solutions for this narrow scope, but not for maybe bigger opportunities that existed that they don't even know about. So creating that assumption narrative and then preparing for your user research, right? Those are the steps. Part one, it's going to be a 4-hour workshop, and part two will also be a 4-hour workshop to finish. The process here. So you're going to review your objectives, assign team roles and responsibilities, define the scope, and take a break, right? And then assign groups of 3, choose a stage and discuss, and then list issues and ideas on stickies for this 1-hour assumption journey, and then a recap at the end. So essentially you're coming together, you're having a critical conversation. Most of the time is there. You're going to assign those roles. Hopefully you've done number 2 beforehand a little bit, right? You're not just coming there so fresh. And same with 3, but discussing those. And so we have a lot more time with defining the scope, because it's got a lot of parts and pieces. We'll talk about that in just a moment. And then you're actually going up to the wall usually. Now online, we're doing journey mapping digitally, especially with stay-at-home culture, right? So you can do this digitally, and then you just have to do this exact same step with web conferencing software, and then such as the one we're using, and then using some type of digital whiteboard tool, such as Miro. So question for you, and I think some of you actually filled this out. Let let me relaunch this. Let's go to question 2. Can you look at just question 2 and question 3, actually? If you already filled it out, please, if you would, fill it in again. Sorry. I don't mean to throw all the polls at you at once. So are you still making the business case is my question to you. And the second one is, how do you collect your inputs on question 2 and question 3? Where do you get your input for your journey map?
Okay, Frank, I think we have a problem with the submission.
Okay, couple people are not able to submit.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. Anybody else having a problem, let us know on the chat there. Just, I'm not sure if we can do anything about it, but so it looks like some people are not able to see it. Yeah, so it looks like for those who answered, most just getting started. Sorry, we're going down to 2 here. So yeah, so yes, actually 55% of people made a case for journey mapping, have made the business case, and 36% no buy-in. The third question, which is where to get your input. So surveys, user interviews, half and half, and focus groups, 27%. Employees at 64%, being that's the top one, and user testing 55%, and then none. So let's look at, I'm gonna stop that poll. Sorry if you couldn't see it. That's, I'm not sure what's going on. Let's look at, there was a study done on this asking CX professionals, not just general anybody, but customer experience professionals globally. 72% said they use a survey, 39% said they use interviews and a focus group. And I would have split those out if I was the person that provided that, because there are 2 different things, 2 different research tools. Social media, 32%, and user testing, 16%. And employees, the highest one, or sorry, second highest at 55%. So surveys at 70, most people surveys globally and interviews and focus groups. Now, the question about data is, it's like garbage in, garbage out. So surveys are okay, but surveys are very limited. They're a market research tool, actually, quite historically, they're used in market research, and they don't get you the depth of why and the story, right? You can't ask why I don't know if you know the technique, the 5 whys, why, you just keep asking why and kind of peel the onion. You can't do that really with a survey. They're better now with logic branching, but I like to combine surveys with user interviews or diaries, online diary studies. Focus groups, I wouldn't use at all. Focus groups, I think, are inappropriate for any type of UX, CX activity because they're asking for opinions. Focus groups are a market research technique. You see, with UX and CX, we don't really care about opinions. We care about behaviors. We're not trying to influence opinions. We're trying to influence the customer's behavior. We want them to do things. We want them to, for example, social distancing, 2 meters, 6 feet. We want them to do, go here, do this. Now fill in this, complete this, do this. Those are, and we have interfaces to give them. Now stand here, now fill in this, now download this. These are behaviors that you need to understand underlying motivations. Employees, It's okay if the journey map is for employees, but if it's not for employees, then employees are no good for that one. You're just going to get an internal perspective. They are a good source of information. Don't get me wrong. Nothing wrong with employees, internal sources of data, nothing wrong with quantitative data, but start with quantitative, start with analytics, start with employee, start with maybe you've done focus groups, maybe you've done market research. Start with that, with your assumption journey mapping workshop, the one we just reviewed, and then move to the actual user interviews, ethnographic research, and bring that to your second workshop. When you ask these professionals how satisfied they were, you see that majority, 60%, are saying they're not satisfied. And it's because of those reasons why I gave with each of those tools, you know. Social media is also very bad, you know. User testing, I think I didn't cover that one, but user testing, some of you are using user testing. User testing, not an ideal tool. User testing is for understanding how users use your product today, going through their frustrations, but it doesn't give you that holistic day in the life, the dream. You don't have no time for the dream state, right? The dream state's not gonna, the dream section, the second purchase, that's not gonna come up really. You might get a few bits and pieces. So user testing, I would not recommend it. Not recommend it, even though you think, well, that's user research, friend, user research. I'm talking about user interviews. I'm talking about ethnography. And I'm gonna give you a chance to play with that in just a moment. So thanks for completing the polls. Now we do have to talk about how to do this remotely, right? Because we're in a work at home kind of reality. And this board, I think there are maybe a few other tools. This one is popular. And they've improved their functionality so you can invite people. We use Miro board, but you should check out other options available to you as well. You want to bring people that are from the business team, the implementation team, the UX team, you know, marketing. You want to bring everybody. This is not a closed, you know, session for just the gurus or the people that love journey mapping or that love customer data. You want to bring people who can influence and who also can own. Like, this is the difference between, you know, a UX designer making a journey map, which I used to think, and I still have clients that think that's what it is, versus making it with everyone as an organization, doing this process, this double workshopping process. Here we are, customer interviews, contextual interviews. That's context interviews are like, show me how you do this. Talk me through this. You know, so when I say interviews, it's more like you listen and they say, well, let me just, here's, you know, when I download the app and I look at this thing, and then they're showing you that and they're talking. They say, you know, the reason I downloaded the app because I saw a brochure. The brochure said that I could get, you know, $10 for free, but I never got the $10. I don't know what happened to that. You know, we had customers say to us, they started shopping at this new store, and they signed up to the rewards program, and they expected an email within the first month. They expected a coupon of at least 10%, 15% off. This is an e-commerce and a retail and an e-commerce store. They expected that, you know, and so it was like, wow, you know, it's just a small thing, but you know, the marketing team was like, wow, we know that the loyalty program is terrible, but that helps us do something with that information too, you know? So the ethnography and the field research, ethnography is a culture study. It's also think of it as a user interview where you're just having an open conversation and listening to users talk about their problems and their needs and goals and so forth. So we call this an ethnographic field study. A diary study is a related technique. It's where you send it home. So diary study is very good now with COVID and online interviews. Contextual interviews, you can do those online. Just user testing, no, for the reason I already shared. So remote user research, right? You can take a screenshot, or we can send you this afterwards. You can get a copy of this ebook on how to get the most from your diary studies. It'll tell you about the diary study technique. We've been doing many diary studies since COVID started because they're already remote. You send them home, give them to the user. But this guide will show you how to combine them with user interviews so you can add them and get the most out of the diary study as well. If you want support or want to learn more, you can also join uxinnercircle.com, which I'll tell you about later as well. So that's the remote piece. First decisions in your first workshop. These are the important questions, like those KPIs. What do you want to improve? What's the business case? Already half of you on the live call here have made that business case. I hope it was successful. When we say you made it, hopefully you made it slam dunk, to the goalpost. The second question is the scope of the journey. Do you want like that tactical, a fixed one, or do you want a strategic view? What's the business need? If you do a strategic view, but no one cares, or the business doesn't know, but if you do a fixed one and the engineering team's going to use it, or the business analyst or whatever the business team is going to use it to validate their decisions, maybe it's more helpful. And think about the time. So is it now, future? Is it current? Or is it like that day in the life kind of thing? Is it the persona? Is it individual, or is it a collective experience? And there's nothing wrong with either or any of these. There isn't a right. The right answer depends on that first one, the business objective. But think about as well as the impact that you want to have, and that you will measure, because your journey map should tie to your KPIs. You don't just for the fun of it. You do this because you want to improve an acquisition, a conversion, a retention. You want to do something. So you also need to measure that to know if what you did is working, right? That takes us to our two-step process. Remember in part one, we defined our team. So we're going to do that. We're going to outline those stages, those pain areas and stages, the goals and scope of it, and create that skeleton, right? And just to flag it, it's inside out. In other words, it's the company's idea of your assumptions, if you will. In part two, we're deeper and ground it based on the actual workshop. Let's talk more about that first step, that first stage journey map. So these are the things we want to put on there, the actions, like what users need to go to the next step, what questions they have before they will move to the next step, the happy path. What did they find helpful? What did they find bad, annoying, broken, stressful, and ideas that you have, and so you want to basically, it's a of what stakeholders think today, and it's important to mature this and not just do this first workshop, but do this second one to tell your stakeholders that this is a two-step process, in terms of generating the map, and then executing it, of course, is involved after that. I mentioned you need a champion, and that's important as well, right? Just to re-emphasize. If you look at a journey map and dissect it for a moment, you've got those stages in their journey. You've got something happening, this experience in the middle, and these pain points and the drama of, it really is like a story. If you're familiar with story, I mentioned that this is a storytelling tool. It follows like a story arc. If you're familiar with storytelling, story arc, you start in storytelling, they start with setting the background, the exposition, and then they build the rising tension. They build, something happens, think of your favorite movie or drama. This is why soap operas are so popular, because they keep looping these. So they build, and then there's a rise. Then there's a conflict at the top. There's the hero or the character is in conflict and needs to solve some problem. And maybe it goes again and again. That's what this loop in the middle here is. It reminds me of. And then at the end, that's the falling exposition, or the denouement, like the completion. That's where the thing gets resolved. And to me, that's my dream state. That's my, what is your dream state? I like to say, remember dream state, because customers are always dreaming. There's always a problem bigger than the one that you want to solve for them. There's always something next. There's always something that deepens their experience and relationship with your organization. And this is what your research should show you: user goals, user tasks, what they're doing, what problems they're trying to solve, emotions, the happy, sad, context, where is it happening, processes and procedures, broken stuff, gaps and barriers, opportunities. It should show you personas. And the way that we use personas at Experience Dynamics is, you think of it like a hat, a problem the user's trying to solve, not so much the way a marketing persona is, which is like a demographic, a snapshot of the customer with a name, but these are behavioral profiles. And artifacts. So your research should show you artifacts. Artifacts are tools, things people use physically. They might be mental. They might be, I remember when I did my first banking study, actually, for an online only bank. This was in 1999 in San Diego. And I thought to myself, why are we talking to customers? Everybody knows how to balance a checkbook and manage their money. Well, why don't we just use our own knowledge, right? This was my first field study and my first banking field study. And I realized when I started watching the users, they said, this is how I balance the checkbook. And they put like a little red star, kind of reminds you of that notification, right? And I was like, why are they putting that? And they put the calculator over here, calculator is a tool. I thought, why are they doing that? What are these notifications anyway these days? Do they mean anything anymore? They don't, right? They don't mean, but they used to, they're supposed to. And I have to admit, I still design notifications, even though they don't mean anything. They're a design pattern, but they're just an artifact that tells you there's a new message. And in some apps, they might be helpful, but if you're designing the notification user journey, you need to give people control. Why? Because the notification experience is filled with overwhelm. People are overwhelmed with notifications. Business to business users, employees, customers, business to B2C, B2E, B2B. They're all overwhelmed with notifications. So we've had to think a lot about the notification user experience and how to improve it. The channels, of course, right? Your research should show you where they're happening. Touch points you've maybe heard of. The definition of touch points we use here is that you have the company, you have the user. The company has interfaces like an employee saying, hello, welcome, it's McDonald's, like, here's your order. How can I would you like fries with that today? All those things are scripted. All those touch points are scripted, those interactions. Starbucks is the same kind of thing. You know where to go to pick up your order, right? It's the happy place. There's your personalized signed cup. Here you go. Have a nice day. All that stuff is scripted. And it's that intersection of that touch point where value occurs, and these touch points are driven by needs and context, with someone in your company and the artifact, whatever it might be. And it might be the customer might have a PDF, or they might have a form, a physical form that they're filling out. It might be something online. It might be a conversation that they had. It might be something they generate, not that you push at them, but that they bring forward and they say, yeah, but I want to know, how do I do this? Finally, we have the moments of truth, the emojis. And these are those emotional charges, those like, wow, that was amazing. Like, what a great thing, right? So it's your turn. Thank you for listening. I have an activity here for you. So wake up. I'm only joking. Okay, so I want you to watch this video. This video you'll find at this link. You have to go to this link. I'm now going to use a magical feature for those of you that are on the session. I'm going to put you in breakout rooms. I'm going to pair you with another person on this call, and you're going to do this activity with that other person. If you have a problem, please chat. Mauro and I will help you. I can float in and join you. What are you doing? You're watching this 8-minute video. This was a remote user interview. What is the topic? The topic is, it's a Brazilian woman talking about how they manage money and how they do mobile payment in Brazil. So she's describing the situation in Brazil of mobile payment adoption. It's a user research I did a few years ago of a global study. And I wanted to know what was going on in Brazil. And this is her interview. So I want you to watch this, but while you're watching this, so this is like all of a sudden now you're like, wow, now we're having to do something, right? So if you're at home, same thing. Get this link, take a screenshot, write this down, if you would. CUTT.ly/NFEK11 capital C. That's where the video is. What I want you to do though is to listen to it and take note on this skeleton journey map. So just draw a piece, if you have a piece of paper or whiteboard or something there in front of you, go get one if you don't have one. And this arc, this story arc, this journey arc, and things to note: tasks, stages, questions, channels, challenges, opportunities, all this. I want you to just take notes as if you're doing that first workshop, that assumption workshop, right? And I'm giving you an input from a real user. So I want you to do this, and I'm going to break you out into groups to do this. Again, let me go back.
Can you share us the link, please?
Yeah, I'll go back. I was just going to say, let me go back. There's the link.
It seems to be broken.
Oh, really? No.
Yeah.
Oh, that can't be. Let me just let me better yet drop you the link on the chat.
On the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll want to share that. So while you're doing that, maybe you can get your piece of paper and get ready for this exercise. So sorry about that. Here is, tell me if this, Mauro, if you can hit the link on the, tell me if that works for you, if you would.
Did you send me a link?
It's on the chat.
Okay. I haven't got it yet.
Okay.
No, I haven't got the link.
Okay.
Can you share it to everyone?
Yeah, I shared it to. Sorry, let me share it to everyone here. Sorry, here. Oh, sorry about that.
Yep.
Okay, try that.
Okay,
and
now we have access to the video. Yeah.
Yeah, can you click it and see if you have access to that video? Have access to that video now. It's working. Okay, cool. It's working. Great. All right. So you've got the link. If you've all got the link, click on the link right now, if you would, and then I'm going to put the other thing on the screen so you can kind of have for your notes there. And you should, this one for your notes, and the link is on the, so you're going to watch the video, you're going to take notes in this format, and then we'll come back and take the notes while you're watching the video. That's while you're watching the video. We'll come back in 10 minutes, okay? If anybody has any questions, please raise your hand or get on the chat. I will find you. So now I'm going to transport you to rooms. Actually, yeah, it's going to be like 3 or 4 people in a room, actually, is what we're going to do here. So you'll have like a small group. You'll be transported to a breakout room. There'll be 3 or 4 people. If you're watching this later, sorry, just do the exercise on your own. Have fun. All right, so let's continue then. I don't know if we lost some people or maybe some people are coming back in. I've got a poll up. It's question number 4 for those of you who are still with us here. How interesting was this activity? Hopefully you got a chance to do it, and maybe all of it if you're struggling with a link or something. But for what you did, usually we don't do this, like create the assumption map we're as a note-taking thing. So we've overlapped a few things here for you. This was a task, but it gives you a chance to kind of like, lay out some your first journey, if you will, with one very short interview. And imagine what a 1-hour interview might reveal. Just even that 1 8-minute clip is actually pretty revealing as to the situation for mobile banking and mobile pay and money management in Brazil. So it looks like 80% of you said it was interesting. Well, I'm glad to hear that. So that was our first. Our second workshop then is where we share that user data with. Now this is where we represent in a persona. So we create personas. They're a standard kind of sister verbal, or they pair with the journey map. So personas, journey maps. That's what come out of the user research. Remember in the user research slide, we showed that. Somebody had a question of the difference between procedures and processes and procedures. Those are things that you internally make people do. So there are processes like you have to do this, then you have to do that, business processes. And procedures are like, the rules maybe within those processes, like processes and procedures as in bureaucracy, basically, So the COVID example is, first you must use hand sanitizer, then you must stay 6 feet apart, then you must wear a mask. So there's new processes there, and then procedures that you should follow, such as if you cough, you have to turn into your arm and so forth and so on, right? So the second workshop then, in the second piece, we identify those priorities. So look at socialize the data, bring it all out, and then we map it out and detail it and put it on the wall. And that's our outside in map. And finally, prioritize actions and recommendations. All journey maps should have recommendations. They're not just a window into the user's world. They're a way to prioritize. Remember, it's a decision-making tool, right? So you're in your actual journey narrative, and you've got your phases, your persona goals and tasks. And it may be a persona-based journey map, or it may be a broader, collective, everybody kind of experience, like this one here. Capturing your touch points, where your channels, where your tasks and artifacts, maybe things that you noticed that the user was doing, and emotions, like what do they want versus what do they actually feel about an experience, and how a user actually evaluated. So you can play with the kind of data that you put on your journey map. You can adjust it for the type of problem that you're capturing in your journey map. You can just play with your own. I highly recommend you create your own template, and you don't use canned templates like you find on the internet or you find on Pinterest or whatever. And end up looking something like that, right? But the goal of this workshop is to capture goals, expectations, and experiences of customers. You can bring in that stuff you had before, but also comparing the two can be quite powerful. The assumption one to the actual one. And that's, you know, that's a learning opportunity for your organization. This is how a lot of organizations are building journey maps. There's 4 areas that I want you to pay attention to in your journey maps. And those 4 areas are touch points, when, where, and why the user or context causes that interaction with you, the company. The channel, right, where it's happening. Is it the call center? Is it a chatbot? The persona, what problem are they trying to solve? What role? And what emotions do they encounter as they're solving it? Let's talk a little bit more about those. Clarification again on a touch point. We're defining it here as a point of interaction. Now, a lot of people talk about touch points like they're channels, like the touch point. You know, the user goes to the store and they interact with the kiosk or the teller or whatever as a touch point. And there may be a touch point within that channel, but that's really a channel, you know, going to the store, going to the mobile app, those are channels. So just to be clear that the touch point is that need, if you will, coming forward, and then meeting your organization, maybe in a channel, or maybe not. It could be a channel or not. So where do they look for value? Where are our users looking for value is the key question that you want to be asking. Okay, so then we go to MOTs, emotionally charged moments. And the question is, in an experience, where do users decide their loyalty was? They were like, wow, then I knew that was the best thing, you know, or like the experience I told you, the new shoppers, they signed up to rewards program. They expected an email. Where was the email? At least give us a 10% coupon to encourage us to shop. Very interesting expectation. The question with MOTs is, what emotional events impact this reflection? A reflection is something that it's an NPS, Net Promoter Score. You know, would you recommend this company? The intent to return. These are marketing metrics. Reflection and emotion design is one of these powerful metrics that Don Norman mentioned in his book about emotional design, that it's reflection. It's like, how did I feel almost about that experience? It's not necessarily conscious, but did you meet me? Did you lose me? Was it a good experience? Did the channel break down? You know, it's really, think of MOTs as those hate love, you know, like the customer hates you. Why do they hate you? You might create a hate map. You know, one customer experience director, he created a map, and he took every single like process and procedure or touch point, things that they made the customer do, like different bills and different forms to fill in. And he put it all on a big wall and he showed his team. And like people were like, the director came in and said, wow, we make the customers do all that stuff. That's crazy. So in your part 2 workshop, you want to share the data, like we said, identify priorities, map the details, prioritize actions, and then KPI action plan, key performance indicators. Like, you've got to measure this stuff, right? So you're spending like an hour. You can do this beforehand. Like if you do user research, I'll typically have a separate meeting just for user research, but maybe you need to, you know, re-socialize the data, or there's other stakeholders that didn't come to the other meeting, which was more smaller meeting. It's a very, very common scenario for me in my consulting work. Analyzing personas and artifacts and creating an affinity diagram. That's the sticky note thing on the wall. It's grouping by themes and topics. And then we assign a stage like before, put them on sticky notes, and then build the actual journey map and recap at the end. It's important to create clear instructions, and you want to give people a handout. Those are some tips here of actually facilitating this. It's implied that there's a facilitator. So remember we talked about identifying the team and a champion in the beginning. Maybe that person's a facilitator. Maybe it's a scrum master. Maybe it's a project manager. It depends on, you know, who it is. With that journey map that we looked at before, we had stages, channels, tasks, questions and insights here. We had pain points listed here with these minus signs. We had challenges in that middle stage and the dream stage at the end. And of course, our recommendations down at the bottom. Usually have a title for these things, and you can add other things to them. You know, this isn't the like the only way to represent a journey map. But I hope this gives a skeleton, a template for a starting point. So tips, remember that you're giving this not for you. It's not art. It's a document for decision-making. And you want to help people interpret. Don't make them think and look with a magnifying glass. Use icons, for example, for channels. Use those silhouettes like we like to use. These kind of cartoon type, just to show the customer, just to give it a little friendly on the eye. Make it playful. Make it different each time. Use your own template. These are the things. So as we come to the conclusion here of how to use journey mapping for improved UX and CX, I want you to think beyond touch points. I want you to think holistically. It's not enough to just focus on the problem that you're trying to solve. I know there's a temptation to do that, but that's going to get you solutions for just that problem. And I would rather have you spend your money seeing big, and then maybe you solve that problem in that one channel or in that one set of touch points or whatever that's causing the problem. Great quote here from former SVP from the hotel chain Hyatt. As soon as she starts beginning about her, the dreaming. So this is the dream stage at the beginning. This is a reverse dream, right? Which is an interesting acquisition issue, and in e-commerce, e-commerce is all about funnel optimization and getting them through the cart. It's all about the buy. Here's the page, get them to buy, get them, and there's some bad habits from that way of thinking, because you want the customer to be informed. Is like choosing healthcare in the United States. Obama actually had, during the Obama administration, he had a UX director for his campaign, but they kind of got rid of that role. And then when he came to role healthcare as Obamacare, flagship kind of innovation, it failed miserably and it just collapsed. We did a test of someone choosing health. People didn't know which plan to choose. There were so many choices. We recorded 55 errors on one particular form. So painful. And that, that was across, that wasn't just us, that was the entire thing collapsed, and they had to apologize. But they didn't think holistically. Think about that wider experience. Think about your CX, your customer service, and your user experience, because that's really, the journey sits in the middle of that. And that's why this idea of orchestration, of orchestrating channels, orchestrating touch points, understanding moments of truth and presenting, optimizing moments of truth, make them happy when they want to be happy, because now you understand their journey. So this is what it's all about, is unification and streamlining of those things. And the experience that you have with journey mapping, I would also say with your organization, you need to think about journey mapping, again, not just this tactical deliverable or this visualization that you create or your designer creates or your UX person creates, but as a organizational journey that you go on. And now that you're on it, you start measuring it and seeing results and using it as a way to get into CX and UX. Make better decisions. That's what it's all about. I want to leave you with a story about me buying some flowers at Christmas. I get the email, $20, starting at $20, flash sale. Wow, I don't know these guys, but this looks like a good email. I've heard of the brand. It's a popular brand. And there's the bouquet I picked out, and I go from email to the web. I get the checkout here, and it went so fast. It said minus this, and all this. And then finally, I only noticed when I hit the buy button or the submit cart button that the total order was, I think, $60. And I thought, wow, that's a little bit more than I'd like to spend. And so I called here's my channel. So I called the call center twice. I had to call the calls. Didn't understand me the first time. I called back. Then I said, I'd like to cancel this, right? Finally, I got a confirmation cancellation email. This is all about within 15 minutes. But the amount of the wasted effort to acquire me, it actually was a UX issue. It actually was the visual design. It didn't show, they're being disingenuous about the sale and the discount, the the total was 59, the sale was 59, so it was plus minus, but then the shipping was 59. So I was confused. But the experience I had with the call center was also horrible. I didn't want to trust these guys. If you Google them, you'll see, so this is what customers do. If they have a bad experience, they go online. This is an actual blog post that says a ripoff if I've ever seen. And this guy is talking about his dream before. His dream was to get to buy, like me. Now, this is not me, but it's a similar sentiment, right? I don't like shopping for flowers online anymore because what you see at the top is not what you get. What you get is at the bottom. Count the roses. I mean, they've shorted the roses by like half, It's just, they look like this. It's miserable. And I feel bad. I'm like, I give this to my wife and I'm like, oh my God, I feel terrible. I've given her this, limp bouquet. So this is the repercussions of you may bounce back from a channel, but you've wasted that, opportunity and the money of acquiring the customer, your call center's been taxed and so forth and so on. And leave you with this quote that the game here is creating new value. It's about expanding, and that's why future journey mapping is particularly important, especially in the very turbulently changing world that we're living in. Journey mapping to me is essential for any organization. Remember why journey maps. 67% of customers said they have a bad experience and that's why they leave, churn. 91% of unhappy customers leave without leaving a complaint. So you don't even know you have unhappy customers. They just leave. They don't bother telling you because their reflection was poor. They're angry, right? Their moment of truth, they're in the hate camp now, right? 6 to 7 times more expensive to attract new customers. Again, different statistic that we're seeing, reinforcing the research from the other industry analysts about retention. And it's important, I think, that you make your business case up front and why it can help. That's going to be critical. So let's dissect and wrap up, and we'll take a few questions. The visualization, right? No, right? It's how it's made and who makes it. It's the pain that you saw from your insights, your evidence, right? So evidence-based journey mapping. Also how you drive it forward in your organization. It's got to be there, those stories that you have and tell, the conversations you have with other, one of the biggest things that we've seen with journey mapping is people say, I had no idea about these or these initiatives. It's hilarious. The biggest brands, they sit there and they go, oh yeah, I did a training, in-person private training with a huge brand, huge. They're like the government. They're that big and they're everywhere in the world and they're just enormous. And there's like 20 people in the room and the one guy goes, oh, we're doing this and we're doing that. And the UX manager that was organizing the training was like, well, I didn't know you were not. And it was like, those are those cross communications, sharing, looking at the same data, making those good decisions together with empathy, with consensus, focusing on opportunities. This is where you get ROI and things like conversion, engagement, and adoption. And that journey mapping is so important and is so common in business today. It's like a given, but it's an organizational mindset. Remember, a mindset. You've got to take the organization with you. Thank you so much. You've been great. Thanks for sticking with the zoominess of today. I hope it was more engaging and more fun than just listening to me all the time, but thanks for listening. This is part of a 8-hour class you'll find in Udemy in a little bit. If you're interested, I've just launched a community, a VIP kind of peer mentoring, and there's 100 of my videos and trainings from the last 20 years in there. There are monthly master classes. It's a whole lot of value. It's my way of giving back. I've been teaching at the Interaction Design Foundation, a nonprofit, and for the last 4 or 5 years. And you can also find my trainings there. My website is experiencedynamics.com. That's my consulting site. Let's take some questions. And as we come to a conclusion here, Mauro, do you have any favorite questions here?
Well, thank you, Frank, for the presentation. I will take some from the chat here, and then we'll go from there. So there is a question here from Samir, and he says, is UX related with single channel and customer experience related with multiple channels?
Oh, interesting. Well, we're in a multi-channel, omni-channel situation with everything. So yes and yes. I mean, like I showed in the diagram, you have journey in the middle, right? You have UX at the bottom, you have customer service, you have customer experience, right? So the reason why why is CX and UX separate? It's because CX was pulled out in around 2000, 2001 or two, something like that. It was pulled out as a term when UX was not fully a term. It was not fully, it was like in fact, everyone was calling this customer experience. But customer experience was taken over kind of by marketers to try and track and quantify, and there are tools. For example, you can do customer experience management, CX management, digitally with tools. You can plot it, it's like analytics. So you can see how many people came to your hotel. You can see how many people got the welcome message on the TV. You can see how many people got the greeting, got the welcome pack, got the free gift. You can track those. That's a CX metrics tracking. And you built your CX, you built it so that there's a nice chocolate on the pillow and they get a nice welcome box when they come. Or if you're flying Emirates Air, they give you a COVID kit with a free mask and some things like that. That's CX, but you can track how many were sent out. UX is what happens when you're in there, when you're in your hotel room and they give you that free phone, right? Like when you go to, where was I? The last time I was traveling overseas in a big way, and they gave me a free mobile phone in the room. Where was that? In some country, I can't remember where it was. They gave a free phone, and it was a free mobile phone for you to use. The idea is you're coming from instead of buying a local SIM. So the experience that you have with that, and I'm just taking a more simple one, Wi-Fi. I went to a luxurious hotel. I walked up to it as a top brand for business travel. There were candles at the lobby, and I thought, this is great. This is great. So lovely, mood lighting. They were so professional. I went up to my room. I connected with my Wi-Fi to send some important email. And what happened? I was on the phone for an hour with tech support with not the hotel, but the third party that offers the Wi-Fi. So that's a bad experience. It's a bad customer experience, but the user experience of just connecting to Wi-Fi, it's a touch point, right? If you will. It's not really a channel, but it's a touch point of, I just want to send or in that hotel, they won't allow Outlook because they have security filters. In other hotels and in Starbucks, it's okay. I can go to McDonald's, it's okay. I don't go to McDonald's, but if I can get free Wi-Fi at these fast food places, but I can't get it in a hotel where I paid to be there, in an expensive hotel. Like, what's up with that? So UX is related to multi-channel, not single channel. UX is multi now, definitely. CX is related to multi. There is no more single channel. The single channel world is over. So that answers that question, I think.
Yeah, thank you. We do have some great questions here. There is one interesting one here, which is, if you're launching a new product, how would you go about determining the journey map to start with? Is it based on the assumptions you're trying to test in the marketplace? This is a very good question.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Lori and Mauro, for asking. Sure, everything starts on assumptions. It starts on business objectives. So you can't just, be creative and say like, wow, let's create a new experience for people and just, maybe if you're in an innovation team, there's a very large footwear manufacturer that I'm talking to, that's the innovation team, and they're looking for these, like, let's start blue sky, what we call green fields, or some projects are green fields or blue sky or like R&D, right? For example, Philips or Procter & Gamble, they have a whole R&D blue skies, team where they just dream stuff up. So you're definitely start with your grounding assumptions of what you want to test in the market. And they may be that dirty focus group that I talked about, right? It's a dirty focus group, dirty data. What I mean by that. We were brought in a lot, Experience Dynamics, we get brought in to redesign a project that another agency had designed it. And in this last case, I'm thinking it looked beautiful, looked amazing, but the UX just wasn't there, and the board felt the board is like a startup and they're really important that they, get it right. They felt that the UX just was not there. And so they had us redesign it. They're spending money twice, but one of the data that they had captured, validated, they held a focus group. In the focus group, they brought the CEO of the company to the focus group. Now you talk about dirty data, right? So you have some of that dirty data, like your CEO's opinion, highest paid opinion in the room. You may have surveys. Surveys are okay, but they're low on insight for what we're trying to gain here, right? And your marketplace assumption, sure, just like COVID is a new frontier for everybody. Nobody knows what the best post-COVID UX is. No one knows what the best social distancing is. I have a webinar on that topic, actually, if you're interested in it, but there are some clues, and there are some clues in the brokenness and in the journey and everything we've experienced. We've all experienced this stressful customer service and these broken CXs and stressful UXs. So, you can get clues, but the key, Lori, is that you're ready to back off and to be informed by your customer data and to bring balance to your marketplace, target assumptions, your marketing data, that you're ready to bring balance and you're ready to bring user stories and user emotions, moments of truth, and because right now the balance looks like, if you ask governments, like Forrester Research asked governments last year, if they think they should be listening to their customers, 98% of them, yes, it's so important to listen to customers, right? You've heard this a million times. Then they ask them, are you actually doing anything like journey mapping, for example, to listen to your customers? And 16%, I think it was the statistic, 16%, only 16% had tried these techniques or to do something. So, the reality of like you want to versus what you need to, it's because of this imbalance. And all we're trying to do with all UX work is bring balance between user and business objectives. I hope that helped.
Yeah, it's a great one. I think we'll take a final question here. I will mix this one with the one that I had. So it says, how do you tackle the awareness phase? So how do you come up with the phases? Because when you go online to see various journey maps, there is this predefined phases that you find, and you are somehow stuck to use them, and they don't really fit into how you have to run your process. So how do you come up with the phases? How do you define your own phases?
Sure.
As you go about the map?
I just want to say before I do, some people may have to leave. Please check the poll that's on your screen there and go scroll down to number 6. How is this master for you, please, if you would, and I'll answer the question it's about the stages at the top. There was another question about how do you tackle the awareness phase? So maybe we can combine it. What metrics do you use is what the question was. Yeah. How you determine those phases is based entirely on what you learn from your user research. That's why you have to do user research. You have to do behavioral research. That sounds, like personas, like if you define your persona before you do your user research, that's so biased. So you just don't know. You have to, the common core about letting go and getting balance is letting go of your, assumptions, or your assumption journey map, your market assumptions, all these things, what you think about the customer, all those things you need to be ready to step back from and learn from the customer. We get called in a lot to do field studies, the research portion. We got called in to do one for Microsoft, and they had they had done every other type of research except for ethnographic or user research, like behavioral research. And it took us a long time because they told us these were their users, but they weren't the users. The users didn't call themselves by these titles that Microsoft was calling them. And it was architects, software architects and enterprise architects. And this was a very strategic project next to the CTO at the time of Microsoft, like very strategic project. But they were going in with an open mind. So I have to say that some companies go in with like, oh, what is that? You do this user research? Okay, you just do your user research. I don't know what that is. Just do that, whatever. Go do that and come back. And if you have to do that, it's almost like, just not understanding it. And so these guys, Microsoft, they were open. They said, we want to know. We have so many channels. We serve these guys. And a lot of these guys were senior developers, is what they call themselves. So when we found them, then we had a global component of this, and we went out and talked to people in like 4 or 5 different cities across the United States, and then in emerging markets like India and China and so forth. And we got to understand their needs. So we came back to the team and we presented the report. We sent the report by email. Didn't hear back from them. It was August. And I thought, well, people are on holiday. 1 month, 4 weeks goes by, not a word back from Microsoft. Oh my God, what's going on with Microsoft, and they came back and they said, you know what, reason why we were sorry about the delay, but we thought your report was bullshit, basically. That's the word they use. But we gave it to our MVP, our most valuable professional, they're called. They're 25-year veteran in the field. He also thought it was complete crap, But he realized that the so empirical, it was so well done, there was so much evidence, and it wasn't really. I mean, that was a while. That's a while ago. I mean, the user research we do now, I think, is a much more. It's much more fun to wrap your arms around. I mean, in terms of deliverables, but it was because so we did an online survey. We had a quantitative piece. We did phone interviews globally. Then we had the city visits. We had the stories from the users, the pain points, and telling Microsoft, look, you call these guys enterprise architects. That's the aspiring role. They want to be enterprise architects, but they're really just humble developers, but also they're not just developers. They communicate across the organization. There are these connector people that do proof of concepts and help vet. And so an architect, a software architect, is a very important role. But it's a role. It's not really a job title. So this was a huge revelation for Microsoft. They were like, oh my God, thank you. It's so funny. The senior product manager at the time, he said to me, is there anything, is your family okay? Do you need anything? That's how he was talking to me. It was great. Now I don't get that. We don't get that a lot but what my point is, it doesn't happen all the time. The revelation, the groundbreaking of that story doesn't happen ever. Don't expect just because you do user, it doesn't always happen. Sometimes it happens. Depends on the chemistry, et cetera. But it illustrates is that it can have a powerful impact. The journey mapping process is really just the tool that captures that transformation of people thinking they're help in your company, thinking that they can help their customers. Then they have some evidence from their users, some research. They mix that into their thinking. They are transformed by it, and they're transformed by it, and then they're like, they can make better decisions from it. So I think maybe you can see that poll, by the way, so maybe you can see it now, hopefully. But anyway, so yeah, it should be the journey mapping, like that quote at the end that said it's an organizational mindset. It should be not only just this tool and this place for you to capture these decisions and this storytelling visualization, right? These things that we talked about today. But as a way for you to drive your CX and your UX efforts, for a way for you to make, give people a place to come around and say, oh, now we're doing journey mapping. Okay, now we're developing this new product. Now we're rolling out this new feature. Now we have this new service that we want for our customers. That's the point, that journey mapping can be that post. It's a process you learn today. You can bring people around this type of workshop and this process, and maybe have the stronger results than you've ever had with journey mapping. That's been my experience with it, and the clients that I've helped with it too. So I hope it could be for yours as well. So thank you all so much for your attention and concentration and participation. For those of you who did, hope to see you on a future one. Mauro, thank you so much for putting this together and for emceeing with us today.
Yeah, I would like to reserve a special praise to you, Frank, for this wonderful experience.
Okay, well, thank you. You're very welcome. Thank you all for those watching later in the recording. Thanks for sticking with us. And we hope it was value for you as well.